6 boys awoke on an uninhabited island until they realized they were not alone. This story happened in 1965, when 6 teenagers, aged 13 to 16 years old, from a Catholic boarding school in Tonga, decided to escape from the school and travel south by boat. None of them owned one, so they borrowed a fisherman's boat instead. They took some provisions with them, but none considered bringing a map or compass. The sky was clear that day, but when the night came, the boys made a big mistake. They fell asleep. When they woke up, the water was pounding against their heads. The wind destroyed the sail and rudder and then destroyed the whole boat. The 6 boys were adrift for 8 entire days without any food or water. They shared what they managed to get, even though it was not much, some fish and rainwater. But it was still better than nothing. On the 8th day, they spotted an island on the horizon. It was Atta. This place was not a tropical paradise but rather a huge mass of rock, and to this day, the island is considered uninhabitable. However, it was their only chance of survival, so they did everything possible to get there. Fortunately for the castaways, despite being deserted, the island was rich in resources, and the boys slowly learned to exploit them. It took them almost 3 months to learn how to light a fire by rubbing pieces of wood. Until then, they couldn't enjoy a proper warm meal. Just imagine feeding off coconuts and bananas for 3 months. There were fights and arguments between the group members, but they usually settled fairly quickly. But one day, one of the boys, named Stephen, fell off a cliff and instantly broke his leg, and as a consequence, the others had to pull him up and pin his leg with sticks and leaves. To optimize their energy, the teenagers divided themselves into 3 groups of 2. They rotated between tasks and began and ended their days with a prayer and a song. One of them, named Kolo, managed to build a guitar out of a piece of wood, half a coconut, and 6 wires. These types of activities and routines kept them sane and hopeful. The days and weeks passed, and nothing changed. They even tried to build a raft several times and sail with it, but as soon as they left the desert island, the waves tore it apart. Since they were alone and no one could help them, in order to survive, they were forced to create a community based on mutual aid. For 15 months, they managed to sustain themselves by feeding on fish, coconuts, seabird eggs, and birds. They also found bananas and chickens that had belonged to indigenous ancestors and had reproduced freely while the island had been uninhabited. Slowly and patiently, the teenagers finally established a commune with a vegetable garden, tree trunks to store rainwater, a gym with weights, chicken pens, and a permanent fire. They built a shelter out of weaving coconut leaves and palm leaves. All this was made with their own hands and an old knife when required. They also lit a fire and kept it running every day, with the hope of being found by anyone. On the 11th of September 1966, an Australian fisherman, Peter Warner, was sailing his boat near the island, searching for new fishing waters, when he heard screams. Being used to sailing, he attributed it to seagulls and continued his work without giving it more attention. But shortly afterwards, he saw a male body desperately swimming towards the ship. Warner thought he was some kind of culprit because such people were often abandoned on remote islands. However, the boy seemed to be in perfect health and shape. He introduced himself in English and explained their situation. They had been on the island for somewhere from 1 to 2 years. Warner was initially cautious. To confirm the story, he radioed the port of Nuku'alofa, the capital of Tonga. After 20 minutes, the Nuku'alofa operator tearfully confirmed that those children had been presumed deceased for a long time. Relatives and friends had been searching for them on nearby islands without results. They were considered deceased, and funerals had even been held in their honor. Once the story was confirmed, the ship crew picked up the 6 boys to take them back home. When on board, the teenagers explained they had been students studying at a boarding school in Nuku'alofa, the Tongan capital. Fed up with school meals, they had decided to go fishing one day. A storm made navigation impossible, and they got lost. When the boys returned to Nuku'alofa, the fishermen from whom they had stolen the boat pressed charges against them, and they were even arrested. Luckily, Warner had secured the rights to explore the story and had made a deal with a network in Sydney. With that money, he bailed them out and compensated the fishermen. Their home island celebrated the return for 3 days straight.